Okay, we are live. I want to
Yay.
welcome I want to welcome everybody to
Welcome.
the
All.
first ever You, Me, and
I'm waving at my
BTC
mic.
live virtual meetup. We've never done this before, so we have
And it shows.
we have no idea how it's going to go. Welcome to this special edition of the You, Me, and BTC podcast. This is episode 21. Today's show is taken from our first ever live virtual Bitcoin meetup that happened just days ago. We went on the air to chat about all sorts of crypto topics, and anyone was welcome to join us. The conversation began with some discussion about what might happen when Bitcoin's block reward gets cut in half. Other topics included Bitcoin transaction fees, the dangers of mining centralization, altcoins, and many, many more. Throughout the show, we are joined by a Canacoin developer, the editor of CoinJoint.info, and several others. Your hosts were Tim Baker, John Stewart, and myself, Daniel Brown. Like many first attempts, ours was a little rough around the edges, so we'll jump into the conversation partway through. You can still find the full live show with video on YouTube if you're interested. Here we go. But so I'll get to a question. I'll start with the one that somebody mentioned a few days ago. This was 8-Bit, who he was actually in the Canacoin IRC channel. Canacoin has sponsored us a couple times in the show. Yeah, his name was 8-Bit, and his question was about what might happen when the block reward halves. The block reward is the reward that miners get when they find a block, and I think it's every 3 or 4 years or something like that, that reward gets cut in half, just because that's how Satoshi designed it. It started at 50 when Bitcoin was first ever created, and we are down to 25 now. Eventually it'll go down to 12.5 again, and that's what he's asking about. What do we think will happen when we drop to 12.5? He actually thought it could be a really bad thing, because he mentioned Dogecoin and said that the market kind of fell apart when that happened in Dogecoin, when the reward halved. I haven't followed Dogecoin a ton, but yeah, I suppose he's probably right. Maybe it did destroy the market because, I guess in that sort of situation, if people start mining half as many coins all of a sudden, then maybe they'll be like, I don't really need this anymore. Not really worth it. I see that as a possibility in a market that is much, much smaller, like Dogecoin. I think that's almost impossible in Bitcoin. I think it would be the reverse. I think once the reward gets cut in half, people are like, hey, it's a lot harder to get Bitcoins now. I'm going to charge more for them and raise my prices and things like that, because it's harder for me to get Bitcoin. That's what the miners might say. That's what any kind of day traders or dealers might say. And my guess is that would send the exchange rate up because Bitcoins are harder to get. And the reason the opposite might have happened with Dogecoin is because maybe, and this is just speculation, I have no idea, but maybe because it's a altcoin and because there's less kind of infrastructure behind it, maybe people weren't mining it so much as to use it and develop it. Maybe they just had it because it was fun to mine, and so when the reward gets cut in half, it might all of a sudden be a little bit less fun to mine, a little bit less profitable, so you might as well give up on it when it's so much smaller like that. And that might be what happened in Dogecoin. Hey, we have a new face with us. Phil, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Do you want to give us a quick introduction, and we'll maybe you've been watching, but we'll just summarize, bring you up to speed, and then go ahead, introduce yourself.
Well, I've been kind of lurking around the cryptocurrency cryptocurrency community for about 3 or 4 months, and recently started volunteering to do software QA work for the Dark Wallet and
nice.
Canacoin. So I'm a new guy doing QA work for the community.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, yeah, we if you have any questions or anything, we can get to those in a little bit. But we'll just finish this idea about the block reward. Tim and John, any thoughts on that? Does that make sense? We've been saying how with Dogecoin, I haven't followed this, but somebody was telling me that it fell apart when the block reward got cut in half. I don't mean fell apart completely. I know it's still around. People use it. But my suggestion is with Bitcoin, especially since we already saw it happen once before when it went from 50 to 25. I mean, I know for a fact it didn't really hurt anything because we're still rolling along just fine. I don't remember exactly when that happened and if that might have helped us. But I don't know. Tim, John, any thoughts? Or Phil, anybody?
I think I pretty much agree with what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me what you said about, you were just saying the Dogecoin was mostly, I mean, that was the whole thing, was it was based around people kind of having fun with the whole thing. It was kind of a less serious introduction into cryptocurrency stuff. So, I mean, yeah, if it gets cut in half for anyone who's mining it, kind of for fun, kind of just to get a little bit extra stuff in there, I can see that it wouldn't have as much traffic then, I guess.
I think this is another one of many areas that an economics PhD could be done to study the effect of crypto coin halving and what its effect is. We don't really know. Why isn't it just linear throughout the entire life of the coin?
That's an important thing that we should always say in general in our show. How you mentioned that an economics PhD could bring some more insight there and or might understand that. Who knows? But just for this specific topic and for anybody that watches or listens to the show in general, we're not really experts. And honestly, nobody's an expert.
Don't we look like it? Don't we look like it?
There are people who know more than others, like, say, Adam Back is an expert cryptographer, and Andreas Antonopoulos knows a lot about software security and whatnot. They're experts in certain fields, but even then, when it comes to cryptocurrency, it's really hard to say that anybody's an expert because, I mean, it's just so new, and really nobody has a really good idea of how it's going to play out, what could happen, what could go right or go wrong, especially when, I mean, it's one thing to talk about it with Bitcoin, but when you bring in all the altcoins and talk about cryptocurrency in general and then completely separate kind of projects like Ethereum with smart contracts and what, it's hard to really say that anyone's an expert just because it's so brand new and it's something we've never seen before. So that's definitely an important point to make.
And I think you might have missed one of the points I was trying to make, which is we don't need PhDs, current PhDs in economics, to come tell us about it unless they have something to add that contributes. I'm saying there's opportunities galore in almost any discipline that you can name for people to go study about the effects of Bitcoin on marketing, sociology, economics, computer science, etc. It's just the list goes on and on and on.
That's absolutely true, and I mean, probably most people watching this are already into Bitcoin, but for anybody that isn't, or for if you ever tell anyone about Bitcoin, that's a very important point to make. There's just worlds of opportunity there, and so many different fields, and that's fantastic. And we actually had an economics PhD on the show a couple episodes ago. He was doing a speech, and we didn't interview him or anything. We just had his speech on the show. But yeah, I mean, we're not experts, but we would disagree with a whole lot of what he was saying. He thought that Bitcoin could never work as a currency. And I mean, that's still a tough question. I mean, we can't say definitively that yes or no, but I don't think it's really right for him to say no because it's something we've never had before. Phil, did you have anything specific that you wanted to talk about?
Not really. I just was invited. I was. Seems like IRC goes with Bitcoin like a hand in a glove.
Yeah.
And I've been hanging out on a lot of different IRC channels and making new friends, and I was invited to this today.
All right. Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you. And again, as we transition topics, I'll just remind anyone that you're welcome to join us. There's a link in the description on YouTube or on the events page for Google Plus. Yeah, we got a little bit sidetracked at the beginning. Some people were mad at us for not talking about Bitcoin, but we'll try to keep it on Bitcoin from now on. We're scheduled for about another hour. So yeah, I will. This is from Tokyo Potato, also from the Canacoin IRC channel. Yeah, I'm like you, Phil. IRC is awesome for me. I hang out quite a bit in the channels, and just for fun, just to talk to people and whatnot. He wanted us to mention. I'll just read it. Can you guys talk about some legal issues around Bitcoin ATMs in the U.S.? Which states are the most lenient to operating ATMs? Well, unfortunately, I'll say what I said again before. We're not experts. Honestly, I can't. I have no idea what any state's laws are like. Which ones might be better or worse? I think I've heard that Texas, I think, is where some of the ATMs were kind of starting out in, and maybe that's because things are better there. I don't know.
I feel like there were some showing up in Colorado, I think. Maybe. Or, like,
Okay.
no, not specifically Bitcoin ATM. Maybe I'm thinking of just yeah, never mind. I was thinking of a vending machine that takes them. Sorry.
Okay. Well, that's actually, that's
Can
something.
you buy weed out of those?
No, but I was hearing about it because it was stuff that was, it was like right outside of it, and the name was something like Munchies something, so they were like right outside the door of a dispensary or pot shop, whatever they called them there.
I think that's on High on Potcoin's website, and it is a vending machine that sells weed, outdoor, secure. So I guess it can't be broken into.
And you can use Bitcoin with that?
that
Tokyo Potato asked.
One thing that we might be able to touch on a little better is just the idea of, I guess, I don't know, the fact that there are legal issues around Bitcoin ATMs and Bitcoin in general in the U.S. That's something we talk about on the show quite a bit. It's a really difficult thing because to many people, including ourselves, the whole point of Bitcoin is that it's not supposed to be regulated. Well, and that's actually another thing, is because it is regulated in certain senses, like the block reward is sort of regulated. You know, it's set to be this at these times and set to get cut in half, like we said. The block time is set to be 10 minutes. That's regulated in a way, but I think it was Stephen McCaskill who told us about that, right? When we were saying how we didn't want regulation, and Stephen McCaskill pointed out that it really kind of was regulated, just not by the government, right?
Well, he was also talking about how markets regulate themselves.
Yeah.
So he's talking about non-centralized regulation. He's saying is good and,
right.
natural, actually.
I do actually remember that.
Because we were commenting on Charlie Shrem and his talk, because he said that he had him up there one time, I guess for snowboarding or skiing or something, and we were talking about how Shrem was very much for. I think it was one of the or Let's Talk Bitcoin podcasts where he was talking about, and he sounded very pro-regulation, and we asked Steven, he was like, yes, I want, and then at first I was like, wait, what did you just say? And he was like, yeah, I want, like, customer regulation, I want actual,
right,
like, something that's going to keep us accountable.
If anybody doesn't know, Stephen McCaskill is the CEO of Amagi Metals, which sells gold and silver for Bitcoins. Actually, they accept
coins.
several cryptocurrencies now.
And we've all used them. Well, I don't know about Phil, but Daniel, Tim, and I have all used Amagi Metals, and we like them. So.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, he was. Anyway, the point is there are certain types of regulation in Bitcoin. Yeah, regulated by the free market or even regulated by the protocol. There are standards that you have to adhere to, but the question that Tokyo Potato asked was about legal issues, and that's something that we frankly find annoying. We don't really think we don't really want any kind of legal regulations or anything like that. But some people do. So the argument that a lot of people make is that, well, how can you develop? How can you improve the Bitcoin community and economy if people are afraid of the government? And that's exactly what we have seen. There are no exchanges in the U.S. because people are afraid and they don't know how it's going to be regulated. I guess at this point, some people do know how it would be regulated, but the regulations are too stringent, and you can't afford all the licenses and a legal team and compliance and all that. It doesn't help, and that's why there's no exchanges in the U.S. And luckily, I mean, we have Coinbase, which isn't quite an exchange, and Circle is pushing out there and ready to develop. But even Circle they have a ton of KYC, which we don't really agree with at all. KYC is know your customer. They're going to ask you for your address and your everything.
Email in your ID and everything, which is kind of sketchy, especially when I first did that for Mt. Gox. I was like,
yeah, well,
I don't know if I should do this, but Daniel already did it, so if I get messed up, he is too. So
yeah, well, who knows where that information is now?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll have to see. There's probably some like Japanese guys trying to buy a car in my name or something. But anyway, yeah. So I don't know. Any thoughts on the? I don't know. We just generally disagree with regulation, and we.
Well, yeah, we disagree with the government regulation because it tends to just target small businesses and it tends to favor larger businesses, and it doesn't end up helping. Like, I remember the last time I heard it a lot was when Mt. Gox kind of fell apart, and everyone was, oh, see, this is what happens when you don't have regulation. It's so bad. I'm like, no, see, this is what happens when you don't have government regulation and a bad business doesn't get bailed out and kept afloat. Which, yeah, I feel bad. I feel really bad for some of the people who lost their money, but I don't see how then you can... I mean, because bailouts only come from the tax money they take in the U.S. system, the tax money they take from us to give to failing businesses. So, I mean, even with that, I guess you could maybe do like a voluntary bailout, like if we all wanted to save Mt. Gox, if we thought like if they actually had something, like, and it wasn't their fault somehow they had everything stolen, everyone could take like a crowdfunding thing.
I think I kind of say this tongue in cheek, I'm kind of joking, but it's almost as if we already have bailed them out, because all of us, everyone who had money in Mt. Gox has now given a whole bunch of money to Mt. Gox, which is exactly what a bailout is. So it's almost like we already did bail them out, and really a bailout is where maybe the government chooses somebody else to lose money. If one person is going to lose money, and the government says, nope, I don't want this person to lose money, so we're going to take money from this other person instead. I mean, right?
Yeah, I'm just mentioning, like, I'm reading through, like I've said to you guys the past few times we've talked, I've gone on a little bit of a, like, just watching a bunch of Cody Wilson stuff, a lot of him talking, and he always talks a lot about, or he, not all the time, but a lot about, Frederick Bastiat, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right, but and I finally just downloaded it was like the Bastiat collection on my Kindle. It's from the Ludwig von Mises Institute, and I forget which section it's called, but it's like everything you read always comes up to like any of the government regulations that, like bailing stuff out or protective tariffs, it all comes from people just viewing what is seen, which, I mean, that's kind of you only see what's seen, but you don't take into account what's not seen. Like a bailout, you're like, okay, it's saving a business, all these people have money in the bank, they don't go bankrupt, but then it's not automatically clear everyone who has to have that money taken away from them or all the money that needs to be printed. So you really need to look beyond just what it is happening and try to, I mean, because government or anything, you can't just make money out of thin air. Even if they can just print it as much as they want, it just devalues all the other stuff. So always try to, I don't know if this is really helping at all to anyone, but yeah, I mean, I'd say the stuff that isn't seen is very important to what's going on.
I can't comment on the legal issues because I'm not a lawyer, but I would say it's very hard to regulate something that you don't understand, and I would say Bitcoin falls into that category. Even the experts, the Bitcoin experts, are rare, few and far between. It's rather amazing, actually, at this late, I think kind of a late stage in the game. For example, headhunters don't know about recruiting people for this type of work, whatever aspect of it they're interested in. Certain financial groups won't touch the stuff, even though the Winklevys are all over it. It's just a real mixed, a confusing yet enlightening time, and it can't. I don't think it can be regulated. It's a worldwide electronic phenomenon. People talking about, parallel dark nets to back up the internet should any government try to disrupt it. I think before the authorities can get their head around it, we're going to be on to like 2 or 3 more generations of advancement. And I don't think anyone could predict what happened with crypto in terms of the development of applications around crypto. We knew it was powerful, and we knew that the NSA hated it, that public key technologies were in the public domain. But you mentioned the dark wallet guys. My hat's off to them for. I mean, they've really got chutzpah to identify themselves publicly, given what it is that they're working on. And who can imagine what we're going to have 5 years from now in terms of applications built on top of what's happening today?
Right, and that's something I wanted to mention too. Is you're right. In a lot of ways, it can't be regulated. That's another huge thing with Bitcoin. I would say one of the very main reasons that it was created was because it can't be regulated. So no matter what the government tries to do, the only way they can succeed is if people submit willingly to their regulation. I mean, and that has happened. That's what Coinbase does. I mean, Coinbase says, all right, we're in the U.S., we want to be kind of big and public, so we'll do what you say, government, and we'll pay our taxes and everything. But honestly, with Bitcoin, you don't have to. You don't have to listen to the government, because that's how it works. Is it's designed that you control your own money, and
This is maybe a little bit off topic, but I just want to say real quick, when we were doing that episode on the assassination market, I don't think we ever got to this section in the article, but one of the articles we were looking at mentioned, I think, 2 guys who kind of had this dream of something like Bitcoin back in the 90s. So, I mean, this is kind of just going along with what all of us have been saying, that it was kind of, Bitcoin was made to be unregulated. People kind of had some kind of idea of a digital currency, even as far back as like 1991, I think was one of the dates for one of the guys. So this has kind of been like a long time coming, I think.
I want to welcome Bobby. I'm assuming, Bobby, you're Iron Hammer?
That's me, man.
Awesome. Hey, you want to give a quick minute or two introduction?
Sure thing. I don't know if it'll be a minute or two, but I'm Bobby Gooden, and you probably know me if you've seen me before online as Iron Hammer 5, not Bobby Gooden. And I am the editor of CoinJoint.info and the owner of High on Potcoin and High on Canacoin, which I can't see your name. I've forgotten your name. Sorry, buddy. But Phil, you mentioned earlier on in the broadcast.
All right. Well, that's cool.
One last comment on the regulation thing. I watch a lot of YouTube, and Andreas has said on a number of occasions that any regulation that comes around is going to likely fail, but at the same time, interestingly, it grants some sort of legitimacy, right? Like the ability to donate a little bit of Bitcoin to political candidates. It's right, kind of a joke, but at the same time, it makes it hard now for them to back away from that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
That's that's what we were thinking too. I think it was it last episode we were talking about donating to political candidates, and yeah, we said the same thing. It's kind of a joke. There, just real quick too on that. I don't know if there's much more that we can say just because we're not experts in money transmitting or whatever. But I will just read these last two questions that Tokyo Potato asked. I don't know if we can really answer them in any more than we already have, but he was asking what constitutes a money transmitter and what's the difference between selling gift cards or rewards points. I mean, those are definitely interesting thoughts, and again, I think we would just say it's kind of annoying that there even is such a thing as a money transmitter, and it's annoying that there even would be a difference between rewards points and whatever else he said, gift cards. I mean, it's who cares?
Yeah, it's amazing that something that's so just by being officially classed as a currency, suddenly there's all these strange regulations around it, you know.
Right.
Is he asking the difference between gift cards and the points like themselves, or those versus an exchange?
I don't think he means an exchange. I mean, I think he means like a commercial business, like, you know, you can have a gift card, or maybe like rewards points could be like airline miles or something, which I know people trade and things like that.
I'm just thinking of when we interviewed, that was Andrew Lee, right? From Purse.io, when he talked about how they kind of follow a gift card's kind of regulations, and they have to keep it under a certain amount.
Oh, right.
With how they deal with Amazon, like, because they don't know. Because that was kind of interesting to me, because it's like, what do you do? Because you're not really an exchange, or are you worried? And he said they kind of just have voluntarily just decided to just keep it along, like how a gift card company works, just to be safe.
Right. Yeah. Andrew Lee is actually in the call, but he must not have a mic or something. But yeah, he's from Purse.io, which lets you buy Bitcoins through Amazon, basically, or spend your Bitcoins at Amazon. And he said they don't really know how they're going to be regulated, but he just put themselves in the category of the gift cards and kind of follow those regulations just in case anything ever happens. They can say, well, we followed these regulations. Yeah, that's true. And also just a note to Tokyo Potato, because we couldn't really answer all these questions, I think it would be a good idea for us to put them in the back of our mind, and probably in a future episode or something we'll try and find some articles and some thoughts on that, and maybe be able to answer those more specifically if we can. We'll see about that.
I have one short on that.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, people are creating commodities. That word is being used a lot in this Bitcoin discussion that's ongoing. Is it a commodity, whatever? There are all kinds of commodities being created constantly right now. People are very creative. I stumbled across something today that just totally tickled me, and that was somebody was selling 1,000 likes on Facebook for like a fraction of a Bitcoin.
Yeah, I've seen stuff like that. Yeah,
that's just awesome. If they can do that automated, where they don't have to sit there and click on links, I think that's just terrific.
I've seen a lot of things like that too, and it is pretty cool. I'm not sure what buying those likes would get for you, really. I mean, other than just maybe a little bit more reputation or something. But unless they're real people, which I don't think they are in most cases. Well, although in some cases they are. I know some people.
It would be businesses that are buying those likes, because who else needs them and would pay for them? And what business can possibly benefit from it? Who's making a dime off of Facebook anyway? It's
right.
Great. They have the market cap that they do. Bitcoin should have that market cap.
Yeah, I've seen people selling Twitter followers as well. Like, say, because I guess that would be like along the same lines, like, oh, this person has this many followers, maybe they have something to say. At least that's how I kind of imagine that would work.
Yeah, they're believing. They're drinking the Kool-Aid, as some people would say.
Tokyo Potato said somebody on Ripple created a LIK coin, which was supposed to work somehow like a like, or he said it might be a thumbs up on YouTube. But that'd be interesting. Again, I haven't followed Ripple too much either, but that'd be interesting how there's some sort of like currency or a like commodity.
Buckle your seatbelts.
Yeah.
Pretty soon it's going to be like just a barter system again. It's like trading beaver pelts almost.
people created barter communities and barter exchanges and barter guilds online like 20 years ago. It sort of flopped a little bit, but
I wonder if one day, a couple centuries down the road, people might talk about bitcoins like we talk about like cowrie shells today. Like back in the old days, in these weird places, they used to trade these digital things called bitcoins, and they weren't really worth anything, but it worked for money. So let's see. I haven't seen any questions recently, but we still have our list of topics. Let me see what's on there. I guess what we haven't done, I intended for any guests, just tell us how you got into Bitcoin. Phil, you already introduced yourself. I don't think you told us too much about how you heard about Bitcoin, did you?
I was thinking about that. I'm trying to remember. I've been into crypto for a while because I worked for, a well-known crypto company before Bitcoin existed. In fact, probably some of my colleagues there know, the mystical and mysterious Satoshi. In fact, I'm pretty sure one of them knew him for sure and was an early miner. Unfortunately, I was busy working at the time, not paying attention to this. But a friend of mine just kept harassing me about it and telling me just over and over and over again, you really need to know about this, you need to check it out. And so I started going on YouTube and Googling and reading and consuming all the information that's out there. And I got enthusiastic about it, and one thing led to another, and now it's like my major occupation.
Yeah. Hey, that's awesome.
I think it's creating opportunity. It's creating wealth. It's
absolutely.
I love the publishing model that our colleague has with CoinJoint. I just saw that yesterday for the first time because one of my IRC buddies told me about it. It's a great idea. So we're going to see a lot of fantastic innovation. Everyone keeps talking about it. It's totally true. There's a new software design pattern here. And it doesn't matter whether you're writing code based on blockchain technology or if you're creating publishing models that are distributed or whatever it is that you're distributing. I think everything can benefit from decentralization, no matter what it is.
Absolutely. We mentioned in the last show with the assassination market too, we were saying how it is a centralized.
Bringing it back to that, Daniel.
We were saying how it's a centralized system, certainly, and how that's definitely a drawback because there's one or two people that are making all the decisions. And yeah, we definitely agreed that that was a drawback. But I mentioned, and I think Tim and John might agree, I don't know, but I was just saying how really I think we might not see it now, but over time, pretty much anything could be decentralized and improved in that way, and that's a huge idea and something we definitely hope to see. Hey, Bobby, do you want to tell us anything about how you got into Bitcoin?
Yeah, sure, man. I first ever heard about Bitcoin, I reckon it was about 2 years ago now, and it was actually from a friend, and he was talking to me about Silk Road, which I guess quite a few people probably heard about Bitcoin through that. And he's come around and he's like, have you heard of this thing, Silk Road, where you can like buy drugs and all this other crazy shit online and stuff? And I was like, what the hell? And I was like, how can you possibly do that? I was like, surely you're just going to get caught right away. And he's like, no, you have to buy these Bitcoins. And like, he was trying to explain it to me, and I'm sure we all know how impossible it is to explain Bitcoin to somebody who's never heard of it before. And so for a couple of months, I kind of had this weird idea of what Bitcoin was in my head that I'd kind of created myself, and it was completely wrong and nothing like what it actually was. And then eventually something else, it came up again, and I started looking into it a bit more, and I kind of started following it quite closely, and I was getting more and more interested and more interested. And then sometime last year, I finally actually got some Bitcoin, and then I ended up getting involved with Dogecoin when it came out, and because I found it so fun and the community was so awesome, And then Popcoin came around, and then, sorry, but that's me all over. So, like, there was the perfect partnership almost. And obviously, with the way the legalization movement is going in America right now, it just seemed too perfect to not take notice of it. And then, so I went from hearing about it randomly to 2 years later, I'm now running 3 websites that are all about different coins. So yeah, that's how exciting it is to me. I really want to get involved with it. So here I am.
One thing I want to ask, I've been thinking about recently is basically did any of you either ever completely dismiss Bitcoin? Because I know that's what I did for a while.
You went all apostate on me, Daniel.
Yeah. Tim was the one that told me about it, and I bought some, or I didn't buy them. I just got some on the faucets just for fun, and I had a few lying around, and I remember I read a couple articles, and at some point I'm just like, this is not worth it. It's kind of dumb. So I don't think I lost them. I just kind of quit caring about it, and then it was later. I don't even.
Didn't you?
Oh yeah, I did. I gave them to
your
you, Tim.
dust or whatever to me.
It's probably worth like $50 now, but yeah. So I just gave them to Tim, and then later I somehow got something changed me. I think it was when the price started going up again or something. But anyway, yeah. So I dismissed it for a while, and the reason I was thinking about that is I was hearing Jeffrey Tucker say the same thing, how he dismissed it until he heard it was a limited supply. I think somebody else I heard telling the same kind of story recently. Is that something you guys experienced at all?
I never really dismissed it because the first time I heard about it was my friend saying you can buy stuff online with it. So I was like, there must be something to it, but I just didn't quite really get what it was. And then once I looked into it more, it was just obvious to me. I'm quite a technical person, not a coder or anything like that, but I've always been heavily involved in like working with computers and stuff, and it just kind of made sense. I was like, I can send money to somebody anywhere and it doesn't cost anything, and there's no limits. It doesn't, there's no fees. It's not PayPal. They're not going to scam me and take my money away or whatever, and yeah, so I never actually had a chance to dismiss it really.
Yeah, and that's a good thing in some ways, because if you dismiss it, that can cost you some money when the price goes up.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Although I've spoken to plenty of people trying to explain it to who do dismiss it immediately, so I know there's plenty about. And it's usually the first reaction, And there's so many like in the media and stuff, like it's kind of a bit of a joke. So when you mention it, like I was watching a podcast the other day and someone mentioned Bitcoins and it just got a laugh because they said Bitcoins, you know what I mean? And yeah, so some people have got a distorted view of what it actually is.
Right. I've definitely experienced that too, telling other people about it. A lot of them, they might not say that it's bad, but they're just like, that's technical, it's over my head, and that's about as far as they get. I'm like, well, no, you didn't. Did you hear what I said? So yeah, and I mean, there's not really anything wrong with that because it is hard to understand, but I don't know. Eventually, you probably should.
That's why it's interesting, because it's so different, really. And again, there's another opportunity for someone to go research and study the sociology of accepting this new form of money exchange. Anyone that's tried to transfer money at a bank has that real-world experience of calling. I called recently. I needed to transfer $500 from one bank account to another, and I called on the Friday before Easter Sunday. No, I called on the Thursday before Easter Sunday, and they told me that it was too late to transfer the money on that day, and the next day was holiday for the bank because of Easter Sunday, even though it's not a national holiday or anything like that. It's just a bank holiday. And then, of course, Saturday and Sunday, nobody could be bothered to push the button, so I had to wait until Monday to get them to push the button. I want to push the button myself.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it is ridiculous. Like when you look at this stuff from banks, and you're just like, it's 2014. I can do everything online and instantly, and why can't I do this? Luckily, here in the UK, we're quite lucky that we can send instant bank transfers between personal accounts for free with most companies. So it's quite useful for things like local bitcoins and stuff like that. You can buy online quite easily. But having heard so many stories about in other countries, and especially when it starts coming to international bank transfers and stuff like that, it's when it gets really crazy and expensive. But it's 2014 and we can't just send people money. Well, we can, but people don't think they can because they haven't found Bitcoin yet, I guess.
Yeah, that's one of the tough things in the U.S. is that's kind of what forces people to use PayPal sometimes, and then they get burned by PayPal. But yeah, the easiest way to or the cheapest way anyway to transfer money in the U.S. is with an ACH, but that takes 2 or 3 days minimum, which is as annoying as heck. And so people go looking for instant transfers, and that's when they get into PayPal, and who knows what could happen then, because PayPal is a big pain sometimes. So that's about really the only mainstream way to instantly transfer money in the U.S. I mean, there are some things that are similar to PayPal, but they have the same problems as PayPal. Now there's like MoneyGram and things which can be instant, but then you got $50 fees.
Yeah, those are pretty expensive, yeah.
So definitely that's a huge benefit of Bitcoin. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? Any ideas, thoughts, or really anything at all before I could jump into something, I guess?
I mean, I don't know if you want to ask. Like, I guess we kind of talked a little bit about this about Bitcoin, but like if you could single out something, and maybe you can't do that, but if there's like a single thing that makes Bitcoin the most exciting for you, like if that's the instant transfer, or if it's the ability to basically just hold your own money, which is something that, I mean, we haven't really ever had before in our lives, or if it's or whatever, like what most excites you, or what do you see most for the future in what it can do?
I can say one of the most interesting things for me that kind of really wanted me to start getting more involved in creating content and stuff around cryptocurrencies. And there's the idea of tipping people online for their videos or their articles or whatever and stuff like that. Because the ability to send people, it could be like 2 or 3 cents or half a cent even, something like that, without it costing anything, you can do that, and it can all add up and it can help somebody out. Because my past work was writing about video games, and anybody who's been trying to raise money online by ad revenue recently will realize how hard it is to do lately. The rates are coming down and everything by the time, and unless you're a really, really big outlet, it's really hard to find sponsorship. And now I've found myself writing about cryptocurrencies, and just the other day I managed to get one of my websites, High on Potcoin, sponsored by the Potcoin subreddit. I put up a wallet address and a target amount of $50 for the month, just a small amount to try it out for the first time. And within 2 hours I'd raised $50, and everyone can chip in, and it's all fun, and it's a community effort. And I'm sponsored by a community rather than just selling an ad to some random company or something, It's a bunch of people that actually truly support me rather than somebody who's just trying to sell a certain product. And I think it's a really exciting thing, and I think more content creation websites should put up tip wallet addresses and things like that for people to tip them, so they can realize just how beneficial it can be, because you can spend a lot of time creating online content, and I've done it for many years for very little reward from advertising revenue, mainly because I just love doing it. But this is something that I think more people should take note of, and a lot of the bigger websites should perhaps start looking into, because nobody likes a web page covered in adverts, and if you can do it another way, then why not do that?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Might as well throw in here then that we do have those tipping addresses for our show. It's youmeandbtc.com. So throw us a tip, and I'll throw another shout out to EasyAt, who sent us 300 millibits at the beginning of the show. That's awesome, and we'll probably
thank you very much again for that.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll probably buy some like cigars or something.
You buy some lighting for Tim.
Oh yeah,
Tim, you need a new light bulb.
It's getting darker here too. Yeah.
Tim still uses gas lamps.
He's trying to save electricity for that mining rig he's probably got behind him.
It's a disgusting room.
You're listening to the You, Me, and BTC podcast. We need your help. First of all, we'd love it if you could check out our website, youmeandbtc.com. There you can find donation addresses for every single article and episode, and we'd love it if you could make use of those. We could also use some fans and followers, so if you're willing, please visit Facebook or Twitter.com/youmeandbtc. Lastly, remember to subscribe to the show. You can do that on iTunes or sign up on our website to receive email updates. Thanks for your support.
Two things. I'll echo what was just said about the crowdfunding. That's decentralization, big time.
Yeah.
Crowdsourcing. That's what it's all about. That's what Doge is all about. Look what they're accomplishing with crowdfunding. I mean, I may have found a job through crowdfunding, which is something that the professional headhunters can't seem to accomplish. You know, I think people are more powerful than corporations at this point. That's exciting. But the most exciting thing as a computer scientist is the Bitcoin design pattern, all of the distributed computing problems that it solves that people felt were unsolvable problems in computer science, but they've been solved through what we call the blockchain technology. And this is going to lead to just endless advances in applications and opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. That's huge. Tim or John, do either of you have an answer to that question about what most excites you?
Okay, well, after hearing Bobby, I'm kind of I didn't really think about how excited I get about the crowdfunding thing, but that's a huge thing for me. I mentioned at the beginning I do all the music for the show. I'm a musician, and like obviously right now crowdfunding is like the huge thing in music. But I see all these things like Kickstarter and stuff, and I'm like, man, this would be so much easier with Bitcoin, like, and you don't have to pay any fees or anything. Which, I mean, obviously I'm trying to do that. I haven't been making millions yet, but I'm not in it for the money necessarily.
You might have been making millions of satoshis. I mean,
maybe. But for me, one of the things you mentioned at the beginning that I do really like about it is just the fact that I can hold my own money. I don't know. I think of myself as a little bit of a minimalist, and I don't like having to jump through all these hoops to do stuff. I just want to, like, this is my money. I just want to have it and do what I want with it and not have to go through all these kind of steps and everything like that. So,
yeah,
that's my answer.
Yeah.
You have anything, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I really like with crowdfunding, or just the ability that it makes it so much easier to donate to a charity, because like $5 to a charity is, I mean, a lot of that money ends up going to PayPal or the credit card if you have transaction fees and everything like that. But I think, like, if I was gonna say, like, the most exciting thing to me, it would be like having, like what John said, would be having my own, like, actually having control of my money, that it can't just get inflated basically to the point where it's just not worth as much as it was whenever, like, I mean, yeah, the exchange rate can go down, but it can't get inflated away from me, and I don't have to, like, because it's not forced on me, I don't have to support things I don't like by using it. I can decide where I want my money to go and what I want my money to support. So that's probably the biggest thing for me, is just it's my money. So
I should maybe mention real quick, because I didn't, but we talked about this on the episode about the intellectual property rights and everything like that. But I think crowdfunding is like a really important idea, because I think it makes the value of things more legitimate. Like, we've talked about pirating music and all that stuff like that, and because I'm a musician, like I said, I have very strong views about pirating music and stuff like that, and I think it's like a good thing in general. And I think this whole crowdfunding movement is actually, I think it's good for music, and I think it will be good for everything else, and Bitcoin really facilitates it well, and I think that's awesome.
But yeah, like, it gives, like what you're talking about, John, it gives the money, like, directly to the artist, which is something that I think I remember you mentioning, because one of the concerts that we went to, like, you're able to just give you hand the $10 bill to guy from the band, and he just puts it right in his pocket.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I mean, they'd have to pay the.
You can do it on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just to clarify for anyone, John said he has strong views about pirating music, and to most people, especially since John is a musician, they might assume that he's against it. But no, his strong views are actually in favor of sort of pirating music.
Maybe I should say free music, like free content and tipping, rather than saying I'm in favor of pirating. I don't know. It's kind of a tricky thing. But going back to the thing Tim said about the concert, I think I'm playing a concert on June 17th. If anybody wants to give me Bitcoin, I'll buy your ticket for you in like cash, and you can give me the Bitcoin. Just an offer I'll throw out there, I guess.
Where is it, John?
The Smiling Moose in Pittsburgh. I guess people watching this might not know where the Smiling Moose is.
It's a nice place. It's small, but it's nice.
Yeah.
It's a fun name, the Smiling Moose.
Yeah, it
sounds like a fun place to go.
It's like the attic of a bar, pretty much, but it's pretty cool.
Hey, I want to mention something kind of interesting that I think 3 out of the 4 of you, maybe all 4 of you mentioned this, and it's something that I've been kind of mulling over for a while. I think at least 3 of you were saying how one of the things that excites you is the fact that you can move money without fees, and you don't give the fees to PayPal. And even I said this, and I absolutely agree with those things. I think it's fantastic, but it's important to remember that there are fees to some extent. That's something that I think people should remember when they talk about Bitcoin. A ton of people say there are no fees, and I guess, yeah, if you don't want to put a fee on, you don't have to. But there is something to remember that, there is something called a fee does exist, and we could describe that when you tell people about Bitcoin. But also, the part that has been, I don't want to say bothering me, but just something I've been thinking about is and actually this goes along well with thinking about when the block reward halves, because that's a really important thing to remember, is eventually the block reward is going to diminish, and the fees are kind of supposed to take the place of the block reward. And the part that might be bothering me a little bit, even though I'm not entirely sure, is that do you guys think that Bitcoin could ever become expensive if the block reward starts to dwindle and people start to realize, wow, I have to send a pretty big fee if I want my transaction to go through today, or And another thing would be, what if the bigger companies or corporations or whoever uses Bitcoin, what if all of them start including fairly large fees, and it pushes out the small guys and they get delayed and maybe their transactions never get included? I don't know. Just anybody have any comments on that? What do you guys think about the fees, and especially the future of Bitcoin transaction fees?
It's a fascinating thing to dive into, because we're already at the point where, like, paying a higher fee will get you a faster transaction. If you want those confirmations quickly, then it can take much, much longer if you don't have a fee. So we're already at that stage where there's a difference between a fee and no fee that is noticeable, in my opinion. But about the future, I'm not really sure what will happen. It's something that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, and I think it'll be good to see how it plays out with some of the altcoins that will be mined out faster than what Bitcoin will be. And perhaps that will give us some insight into what might happen with Bitcoin. But then, as you were saying with Dogecoin earlier, what applies to what happens when Dogecoin halves doesn't apply to what happens when Bitcoin halves. So still, who knows, that I think is the real answer. And is the answer for a lot of questions within Bitcoin at the moment is like, we don't know yet. Like, we have to wait and see.
I had to actually read the Satoshi paper to understand what fees were all about. And I have no idea exactly how they're going to work. And the other thing is, my experience with Bitcoin is for face-to-face transactions, like buying a cup of coffee, it's too slow already.
Yeah.
It's great for buying a car or ordering something online, where it's still going to beat a credit card by miles, no matter what. But if people want it to be adopted at Starbucks, and you can't be holding. What are they going to do? trust you, give you the coffee, and hope that it all works out?
Right.
So
Yeah,
you have to wait 10 minutes while we wait for confirmation on this guy's latte.
Exactly, yeah. And that's
I
something
think there
that
is the point that there's a like to actually like double spend or something with Bitcoin at this stage is like pretty hard to do, and it's kind of unlikely that a guy going to buy a cup of coffee is going to like be doing that at the time on such a small purchase. You'd have to buy a lot of cup of coffees to make it worthwhile, and you'd have to have a network of people all buying coffee at the same time, I guess. And so you can kind of trust an unconfirmed transaction to some extent on a small purchase, in my opinion, anyway.
Good point.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, especially on a smaller purchase, because even if it does go bad, there's a much smaller loss.
Yeah, and
And
if you're buying a house or something that's a lot of money, then you can wait a couple of hours at least, I'm sure.
Yeah, you could.
What if you're buying an ounce of pot?
At the
Yeah,
vending
well,
station.
maybe you could kind of hang out and have a little smoke while you wait for the first confirmation to come through or something. It's all good.
One thing that's also has been fascinating to me, and it's fairly relevant. Well, first they were talking about the side chains and how you could have side chains which have faster block times, and you could use those for transactions like buying a cup of coffee. And now they have the tree chains, and they might go in that direction. And those are all, I mean, there's a lot of technical things behind all those. I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe you could see a Starbucks sidechain eventually or something like that.
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
far
exactly.
down the line.
Well, yeah, and even they could even, really, Starbucks could start their own Starbucks coin, and maybe there'll be a decentralized exchange where you can just buy Starbucks coin, which is basically store credit, and use it at Starbucks and something like that. I don't know. That's just kind of like we've been saying several times. It's something that we don't know, and there's a whole world of opportunity and space to grow. I think with the tree chains, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say this because I haven't looked up too much about them, so maybe I'm wrong, but I think part of the idea of tree chains is that you mine smaller chunks at a time, so you could get your transaction included quicker in a smaller block, and eventually that block will become part of a larger block, and eventually that block will become part of a larger block, until eventually it hits the main Bitcoin chain, I think. But I can't say I understand all the technicalities behind those things.
We had another person come in, but I don't think they have a microphone either.
Yeah,
Or at least it's off or something. But
their name was Mona Lisa, but I'm assuming that's not their real name.
that's very good, Daniel.
Hey, somebody that could be their real name. Well, yeah, if whoever that is, Mr. Lisa, if you can hear us and if you want to leave a chat or something or ask a question or whatever, go for it. I mean, in terms of our schedule, we're coming up on about 10 minutes left.
We could always go over, though, if we have to.
That's true. Yeah.
If something's really interesting.
Yeah. I guess since it's another transition, I will just mention again real quick. Anybody's welcome to join us live. There's a link in the YouTube description. Any questions, comments, or whatever, even at the very end here, go for it.
Can you hear me?
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Yeah, pretty well. Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to get my microphone working.
Yeah, that's no problem.
It's been a while since I found it. Yeah, I was going to ask you guys, like, where do you think you see Bitcoin mining in the future? Because one thing that concerns me is this, like, almost centralization of what's happening. Large data centers are building at what I'd say are large amounts of hashing power, and it almost seems like a centralization of mining.
Actually, one really fascinating thing that I think it was actually just yesterday that I was listening to this. It was the Mad Money Machine podcast, and he was reading some of Satoshi's own words, his very first emails or announcements or something. And actually, in some of those very, very first writings, I mean literally the first day or two that it was announced, he was describing things, and actually he was, I wish I could have the exact quote in front of me, and maybe I'll find it eventually, but he was basically saying that he knew that this would happen, that eventually mining would be taken over by large data centers or whatever. So yeah, that's definitely something that is out there, worth considering.
Yeah, I just wondered what the current developers are going to do anything about it, or if anyone has any good ideas to let the developers know.
I think personally the answer to that ultimately is decentralization of the mining. Well and truly, whereas right now we have lots of different people mining and all of that. There's a lot of us, I don't know how many of us here mine for Bitcoin, but not many people that I know mine Bitcoin. A lot of people are mining script coins at the moment, obviously, but and other altcoins on other algorithms. But Bitcoins, a lot of people don't mine Bitcoins themselves. So it kind of leads to this build-up of big farms and things like that, you know. Whereas I think if there could be a product in the future that was like a tiny small little device that had a tiny amount of hashing power, you could easily just plug in and everybody had one, like almost everybody who runs Bitcoin, like somehow we got them out there. I don't know.
There was an original incentive where someone who ran a full node would actually get Bitcoin for running a full node, but it got taken out. So something along those lines would, I guess, help. And merged mining came along to sort of try and help it as well. More people getting on the network, getting other coins at the same time, but not many other coins have seemed to allowed merged mining with the Bitcoin blockchain.
Satoshi originally postulated one CPU and one vote. Of course, we know that that is defeated by virtualization, multiple graphics cards, multiple systems, so on and so forth. So since Bitcoin mining is essentially an antithesis to what Bitcoin is all about, the question I would ask is, would the developers dare to change the algorithm?
One would hope so. It's very dangerous leaving it in SHA-256, I think, going into the future.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend. Change the algorithm. And unfortunately, all these greedy people that have invested $50 million in data centers are going to be able to calculate random numbers all day long. But they should return Bitcoin mining to the one CPU, one vote model somehow.
Yeah, it's a really tough thing to consider because, yeah, I mean, any change to the protocol has huge implications, and then even if they did change it, I mean, there's people who could just follow the old protocol. I mean, it would fork, I guess, essentially, and that's I don't really know how that could go, but yeah, it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah, as Phil said, miners vote with the hash power, so wherever the miners go, that's pretty much where Bitcoin would go. If they change the algorithm, if enough people went on that fork, it would be the fork.
Right.
We've had a few forks already, accidentally and unintentionally. It doesn't really matter. We've survived so far.
One thing to consider, too, is kind of the question is, I guess, like, how centralized do you have to be for it to really be bad? I mean, right now, I guess with, like, 6 or 8 mining pools.
I was just going to say, yeah, we've got, 6 or 8 mining pools getting all the Bitcoin at the moment.
Right, so probably just 2 or 3 of them would constitute 51%. But the thing is, I guess, like, I mean, if they initiated a 51% attack or something, first of all, I mean, I don't know, would people notice? I think so. They would.
Yeah, we had CEX last year that was doing some double spend attacks against, was it Satoshi Dice or Just Dice, I think? Can't remember exactly what it was, but they had nearly half the network, but you don't actually need 51%, you just need a very large portion of it.
Yeah,
So
it's just the more you have,
50.
the more likely it is that the double spend will go through. So you could theoretically do it with 10% if you were really, really, really lucky.
Yeah, that's it. As long as you can also hide the next block for a shorter period of time, you can increase your percentage of luck, if you call it that.
It's an interesting subject for sure. In fact, last month I watched somebody prepare for and execute a 51% attack against Potcoin. It took for a week, they were doubling the hash rate for about a minute or two and then disappearing. And I'm sure they were testing their code. They were developing their attack code, and eventually they launched it, and for about a 24-hour period, there was a 51% attack. I think some coins even got sold on an exchange that were generated in that nature. We better figure it out. I think the trusted list of IP addresses is one way to go. But they got to figure that out, because I predict next fall, if not sooner, at every university in the world, the computer science students be assigned 51% attacks on vulnerable Litecoins and altcoins that are easy to attack and mess around with. And so it may not be a long-term problem, but it's going to be a long-term annoyance for sure.
No, definitely. I'd agree with that, because it's already been annoying for Litecoin. I know probably people might like it, but Litecoin had this similar sort of problem where it's been under attack for a number of years now. It's got more weaknesses and more strengths than Bitcoin in some regards, but it's been under attack many times, and people have tried to do that very thing, literally made it their goal to just try and fork it or try and take control of the blockchain. So it is something that developers need to be actively conscious of, I think, which I'm sure they are. It's just never going to go away, which is sad.
Well, again, Satoshi postulated that it would be more profitable to mine than to disrupt the mining. But what he forgot was that the world has some people in it that can't act in anyone's best interest, not even their own.
Yeah, sadly.
One thing that I'm not sure about, and you guys can correct me if you know, but I would imagine that maybe these attacks on Litecoin or Potcoin, do you guys know, or are they by one person or are they by a pool? Are the pools doing the attacks?
In the past, there's been a few individuals who've put their hand up to say that they've been doing it. You know, I can't mention any names, but there's a couple of people on Bitcoin Talk who have openly said that they've attacked networks and that they've achieved it effectively. GPU mining, it was said it was never going to be possible on Litecoin and such things like that, but they developed it long before they actually released it to the public and were attacking Litecoin in their own time and space. So,
see, I think the thing is, though, you're right, there are people out there who won't even act in their own best interest, but at least with Bitcoin, the only people who could really attack it are the pools. With the other ones, they might, like with Potcoin, it might be small enough that one or two people could attack it. But at least with Bitcoin, if the pools do attack it, I mean, yeah, that would have some definitely negative effects, and maybe they could pull off some things before it was figured out. But I think within the pools, if people saw that going on, then as soon as it happened, yeah, there'd be repercussions. But at least then, when there's a pool, people can back out of a pool. They can form smaller pools or things like that. So it's not a perfect
luckily,
solution.
when BTC Guild got too large, people made a consortium to say, let's move to other pools and let's spread the hash rate. So luckily, in times of dire need, the community has acted, but it just seems, I think, like I said earlier, with these data centers, it's becoming more of a concern that, you know, if everyone's buying hash rate and they've just used automatic scripts to set them up, joining A or B pool, how long does it take until they've effectively taken up a larger chunk of the hash rate and they can actually use it to their advantage by they're in control of your hash rate. They could point it anywhere they want. They could, for 10 seconds, move it all to another pool and perform an attack without you ever knowing and just blame it on the pool going down.
Right.
Centralization at its worst.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, CEX got caught maybe doing it. You know, no proof was ever arisen apart from a few clever people showing that, hang on, there was a few double spend attacks on some betting websites that were successful at the time, and it mysteriously stopped after a few hands were slapped. So things like that. But I haven't got the evidence in front of me. But you know, like I say, I've been doing this for a few years, and it's same things happen over and over again. It just seems to go round in circles. I'm not sure who's got the most hash rate at the moment. I think it's CEX still. It's creeping up again.
Again, this is something I don't know all the details about, but I actually think, I remember somebody suggesting that actually the tree chains might actually help with decentralization because...
Yeah, that's something like peer-to-peer pool. That's something I'm a big proprietor of.
Right.
People, if they mine on peer-to-peer pool, like you're saying about the Merkle tree, if people were mining, they'll get a little bit of the transaction in a block before it's actually in there. A lot like how peer-to-peer pool works. I've always said how that, funnily enough, would actually be Bitcoin of the future. subpools mining on larger blockchains. So it won't be like pooling. It will basically be like sub-pooling on pools.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think is that with the tree chain, you're not actually part of a pool. You're doing your own completely normal mining, but it's just a smaller piece of a block or something or a piece of a block. And so you're not really centralized with anyone anywhere. You're just you're just doing a small part of the work.
Yeah, and that's exactly how peer-to-peer pool works. So, if any of you guys are mining on, I'd advise you guys to check that out. It's a fantastic pool. Needs more hash rate on it, and it's something to check out as well, just to further your knowledge as well for like how these subpools will actually function in the future, because it's a pretty much mirror image of what peer-to-peer pool is at the moment.
Do you know with a peer-to-peer pool, you're supposed to run a full node, right?
Yes, you run a full node, and basically, unfortunately, with a couple of the calculations, you need a minimum amount of hash rate, which I have no idea what that would be at the moment. Unlike a pool where you're paid per share, you're paid per share with peer-to-peer pool, but you have a larger variance. So you'll have the exact same payment over a longer infinite period of time. Most people mine for it for a couple of days and then say, oh, I didn't earn as much, and swap away, which, as you can imagine, is just the incorrect method of mining in principle anyway. You should just point your miner somewhere and leave it unless there's a problem with the global hash rate building up on one pool.
We just got his name's listed as Canna Coin. Is that sub-creative?
Yeah, I am sub-creative. How's it going?
Cool. Hey, what's up? Hey,
Not
well,
much.
first of all, I would just say thank you for sponsoring us so far, and that's been great. Everyone, I think, has been given a quick introduction. Actually, I don't know if so far still all I know you as is Mona Lisa, but yeah, you Mona Lisa and Canna Coin. You want to introduce yourselves real quick?
Sure, I guess I'll go first.
Yeah, go for it.
My name online is Subcreative, but my real name is Josh. I'm the lead creator and developer of Canacoin, and I also run and co-own Northwest Green Thumb. It's the largest online medical marijuana cannabis forum for Washington State. And so just a brief introduction. That's a little bit about me. I first got involved in Bitcoin about 2012 through a family member of mine, which introduced me, and he knew of my technical background, was like, hey, maybe you should really look at Bitcoin as an investment. And the more I looked into it, I just realized it was a whole game changer and a paradigm shift for financial transactions and the future of money. So ever since then, I've kind of been hooked.
Sweet. Yeah, Mona Lisa. You don't have to give your real name, or if you don't really want to.
That's fine. I'll stick to Mona Lisa for now. But
yeah,
UK, kind of middle-aged. I worked in the financial industry, so I'll keep my name a little bit secret. So I've worked in London for quite a number of years now, working for large corporations like Bank of America, like Merrill Lynch. So quite familiar with a couple of things, like just how systems run. Found Bitcoin a couple of years ago, I would say. Been mining ever since, done a bit of day trading on the side, and just been trying to watch it from a side, really.
Do you day trade into altcoins or just with Bitcoin?
I did in the past, but I've tended to focus on Bitcoin solely now, and Litecoin. You can get too distracted, I find. If you just, spread your portfolio across too many coins, you'll start just confusing yourself. Not all coins tend to follow the same pattern as many people as they think they do. Bitcoin goes up, altcoins go down. It's not necessarily the case. But I try to follow the coins I believe in, and I think Litecoin and Bitcoin, in my personal opinion, have had the most strength and following over the time, but I'm sure that's going to change. Dogecoin has created a rather large community around it. I'm quite fascinated by that because what they've achieved. They've managed to, I think, sponsor a NASCAR, and they've done a few other things, and I think Bitcoin's now recently just been sponsored by, like, StarCraft. And Litecoin, what was it? Bobby Lee, and although I can't remember the exact story, but his brother or something is actually involved in an exchange over in China, I think. So other than that, I wouldn't know all about some of these altcoins. There's too many to mention now, so I'm sure you guys could probably tell me a lot better things about them than I could.
That's part of where I've been is On the show, on the podcast, we always support altcoins in general because we like currency competition. But I would certainly be in that camp where there's just so many of them and can't look into all of them.
Gavin said, it's a total experiment. You can't criticize one coin and martyrdom Bitcoin. You know, they're all the same. They're just an experiment.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a feedback loop between the altcoins and Bitcoin in general, just to, like you said, with the experimentation going on in the altcoin world, and just seeing what is possible and how can we change the supplies and the rewards and the halving schedules to see what the outcome will be of that. And in the end, I think all that questioning, it all feeds back up to Bitcoin in the end. And
No, definitely. That is exactly how I hope to think Satoshi wanted it in the beginning. That's exactly why this is open source. Other people can take the code, they can experiment with it, try different methods, and feed back to the Bitcoin devs, or the other way around. The altcoins can absorb some of Bitcoin's features. So everyone needs to help each other, and I do get really annoyed, and I'm sure everyone does, this whole it's my coin thing, and they hate the other coins.
Yeah, that's one thing I don't get is that it really is. It's a relationship with Bitcoin and then cryptocurrencies in general, just trying to expand the idea and find the limitations of the protocol and seeing what we could really make out of it. So.
Yeah, and if you go back to think, like how TCP and IP started, two separate protocols that completely came together and created the internet. It's the same thing as Bitcoin. Everyone should hope, different protocols are coming into existence, different methods of algorithms. Bitcoin may not be the one of the future. That's the scary thought. Hopefully they'll stay current and not closed off from the world, It's just, I get worried, as I suppose everyone does,
That's an interesting point to bring up, though, really, because with the altcoins, I think it is about kind of testing things in some respects. I think some of them already have found niches and good uses for what they can do. But there's also the idea of innovation, and like you say about Bitcoin might not be the one of the future. And I mean, if you look at any technology, I mean, from the moment when mankind designed a wheel, we don't use the same wheels they used when they first made a wheel ever. So I don't think that in the future that Bitcoin will be dethroned because it's so big, but who knows, when you get that far forwards in the future, talking maybe 200, 300 years in the future, maybe Bitcoin isn't around anymore.
No, definitely, we can't see that far ahead. It's silly to anyone to think they can, or that they can predict, what the weather's going to be like in 200 years on that particular day. We might have abandoned all sorts of monetary value.
Let's hope we have, man. Let's hope we don't need money anymore. Let's hope everything's all cool.
Yeah, just go back to trading favors and bartering using, tokens of value.
On one end of the spectrum, I kind of feel that Bitcoin is the only coin that is really destined to succeed, just because, like I said, it is that feedback loop. But as long as the core developers can continue to push the innovation and not hold things back because they realize the risk and the potential outcome of something going wrong. But in the end, with all the experimentation going on in the cryptocurrency world, all cryptocurrency world, I think that in the end, it's really all getting pushed back to Bitcoin to make it the one successful coin. And really, that is my hope, and that the altcoins will just play the extra role to Bitcoin with the faster transaction times and the small innovation and the experiments. So.
No, definitely, and everyone, like you just said, needs to feed that back to the devs. Everyone, unfortunately, it's dried up a little bit. I'm not going to say it has dried up. I'm just saying it's at its least point in time that it's ever sort of been worked on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I definitely
I'm trying
have
to
seen
tread carefully there.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of, I guess you could say,
stagnation.
A little slowing in the growth of the development, but really at this point I feel like they've kind of built the protocol to be a successful platform, and really it's about expanding it and just slowly working on refining it, and you're seeing some of that refinement done with some of the new BIPs like BIP 70 or 71 with the faster payment integration and whatnot. So I guess you are seeing it. It's just a matter of how fast nowadays is questionable.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Like merchant implementation definitely needs to happen a bit better, and it definitely needs to be publicized a bit better.
Yeah, I agree.
Merchants at the moment, I think, rather than having to design their own complete payment system around Bitcoin Core at the moment, there should be maybe a bit more incentive to sort of outreach to these sort of companies that want to accept Bitcoin that probably have no idea where to start. And I think it's just a bad excuse to just throw them over the shoulder and say, "Oh right, well you should, learn about it and do it." They don't do that with Mastercard or any other payment processing platform. They'll walk you through it basically because they want your business.
Right. I think that maybe 2014 might be the year that we're going to see some progression in that, because up until this point, it's really been about creating the extra libraries for Java, like Bitcoin J or Bitcoin JS, or some of these other implementations where Bitcoin is really more marketed to the developers to help build these payment systems. And now that we do have some of these libraries and frameworks in place for Bitcoin, not just the core client, I think that we'll start seeing more growth in the merchant area and see some expansion there with the implementations to make it easier for those who want to accept Bitcoin to accept it.
No, that's exactly it. That's pretty much what everyone wants to hear, so that's good news.
Yeah.
I think most people believe that Square, who they've already announced implementation of Bitcoin for their commercial accounts, their large accounts. It's only a matter of time before they add it in to the thing that your local business. My buddy of mine's an electrician. He's got a Square, so he can accept credit card payments. It's just a matter of months probably before the accept Bitcoin checkbox is going to show up in the Square application for everybody.
Yeah, I know CoinKite have a terminal, which is quite good. I think you can accept Bitcoin in your shop at the moment, but it's just I think it's a bit expensive. Last time I checked, that was a bit around November. It was in a beta around then or something. But I mean, even what CoinPay's done as well, just create a nice API that you can link back to. I know the dreaded Mt. Gox, which is no more, even had a quite nice API, if I may say so, and the merchant implementation was actually quite good.
That's kind of what I was talking about and referring to with the libraries and whatnot. Now we're seeing the ease of implementation for these APIs and these checkout abilities for merchants. And, I mean, now you're going to start seeing companies like Square, they're kind of being forced into this position now because realistically it was only BitPay and some of these small merchant solution businesses that were offering the ability to do that. But now you're starting to see through altcoins and other coins where developers are catching up to speed, and now they're coming out with their own solutions, and it's only a matter of time before we have either open source merchant solutions or APIs, and Square can jump on board now, or they can get pushed out of the arena.
I must say I've been eagerly awaiting a affordable ATM that's open source, because some of them have been a bit overpriced. I think RoboCoin with its, $20,000 or something.
Yeah. Actually, Project Skyhook, they recently just started the Bitcoin ATMs for, I think, $1,000 is what their base units are starting at. And I actually just talked to them on the phone the other day, and they're based out of the Northwest, and I look forward to getting my hands on one and seeing one in person, because from what I discussed, it sounds like they have an awesome project that's all open source and affordable.
Yeah, I think I hadn't seen any source code from them, because I think when they originally announced them, they said, "Oh, here we are." I couldn't find any source code. And
I contacted them, and it was by invite only. So they have a GitHub, I know, and I requested an invite to try and look at the source a couple of days ago, and I haven't yet been added. But I know that you can email them to get some access to that.
Well, that's fine. I'll probably do that. I just don't have much time these days.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah, I heard multiple times that it's kind of like an Android Nexus or something with a cache box attached, which is simple, but that's still pretty awesome. And
yeah, it is essentially a Nexus tablet inside of a box with the cache bill acceptor. They mentioned that it was tied to blockchain.info, which for me was a little discouraging, because I would like to see some more direct implementations, not based on a web wallet.
Yeah, blockchain needs to
expand altcoins and whatnot. Because I would like to see them not rely on third-party services in order to do it, be more of a direct sale.
Yeah, because the amount blockchain's been going down, I'm just going to say, come on guys, I know you're doing hard, but a lot of people rely on them, and I think with the recent pulling away from multi-bit, implementing backups, it's actually a scary thought. How do you get your money out of blockchain if it goes down at current?
Exactly.
Well, I don't know if you guys have used blockchain, but they email you backups every time you create an address.
Yeah, but I think,
And-
was it multi-bit now have taken away that ability to actually import it in the multi-bit client? There was a newsletter gone out, I think about a week or two ago, saying that they've stopped that support.
Okay, I could be wrong. This was a couple months ago, so maybe my memory's fuzzy, but I'm fairly certain that I used that in a normal. It wasn't core Bitcoin Core at the time, but in one of the. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But yeah, that's true. We definitely need those backups to work, or else you're right. And then it is.
Yeah, I only knew it as the multi-bit way, but yes, I'd like to.
And you're right about
that.
Blockchain does have the ability to email backups, which is convenient. I'm just talking about for maybe other coins or other solutions where they don't want to have to rely on the blockchain API, and maybe they need something a little bit more customizable or tailored towards their business. And so it seems like they're kind of limiting themselves by just making it available to Bitcoin and just only to blockchain.info, especially when it's an open source project. But it is the beginning, and like I said, it is pretty cool. So hopefully we can see something come out of that project.
Yeah, it encourages other people to fill the boots. So come on, guys, anyone out there?
Well, that's why I contacted him. I wanted to see exactly how things are working and how I can maybe contribute to it if it is relying just on a third-party service like a wallet app.
Right. That was something I've been thinking about for a long time. Is how it's another issue with centralization is with blockchain. Really, I mean, it's.
I dare to think how many of the Bitcoin community have all their Bitcoin there, to be honest.
I do.
Yeah, that's one thing, and if these backups work, that might not be a huge deal. But I would be more concerned about just information polling and just getting information from the blockchain, whether they turn malicious or if they get hacked. A lot of people just trust whatever blockchain.info says. If it says that this
we've
address,
seen lots of web wallets go down and have gone wrong. I think, blockchain implements an amazing security solution, but is it infallible? We don't know.
Yeah, we actually have another a sponsor, APIcoin.io, and it's one of the first bits of competition I've seen for blockchain. And so I would definitely encourage people to look into API Coin, and just as another alternative and another way to take some of the monopoly away from blockchain. So.
Yeah, I really hope there's some good news, because the last sort of 6 to 8 months we've just had quite a lot of bad news, I think, with web wallets and Bitcoins online, certain things just going missing.
Yeah.
I think that's important for other coins to take note of as well, is having multiple blockchain explorers available, and it's something that communities should think about, especially on some of the coins with bigger communities, because most altcoins, especially the smaller ones, have the one official blockchain explorer that the developer creates. And if it goes down like it did with Potcoin a little while ago, luckily we had a backup one that somebody else in the community had developed, but if we hadn't, then nobody can trace their transactions. And if there was a reason that we wanted to try and find out where some Potcoin had gone from somebody, we wouldn't have been able to check it out and find it out.
It stops the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it does. A lot of developers too rely on the APIs and the calls from these blockchain explorers to display prices or balances or even implement them into their own web apps. And Bitcoin is kind of the space for really APIs in general, and having these centralized solutions that can easily go down that other people are relying on is definitely not good. So you're right, Bobby. So
yeah, that's a point, like you say, about the APIs as well, because when it happened with Potcoin, that meant that on CoinMarketCap, we just dropped to the very bottom of it because it couldn't pull any information.
Yeah, we have the same sort of problem.
That debacle took place after the hard fork that was required, and it took that particular coin days to recover completely from that. So another thing I look for in coins is developers that have the chops to get it done in a timely fashion, or you can see the consequences of not getting it done.
Oh, definitely, and
Yeah,
it's
it causes
fascinating to
problems
see
everywhere.
that they can recover from it, which just shows the community strength behind it. Some coins will fall, I'd imagine, but to bounce back from it just shows more strength gaining, I'd hope. We've all seen what can happen with Bitcoin over the years now. the community behind it is a very strong one, and it can be the said for any other coin now. You can get any of the same.
Yeah, that's definitely important, is the resilience. I mean, we pointed out a couple times over the last hour, if there could be mining centralization or blockchain could go down and things like that. And yeah, maybe some problems will happen, but blockchain isn't the same thing as Bitcoin. Mining centralization is a little closer to Bitcoin than blockchain, but still, I mean, we've seen some awesome resilience in Bitcoin with this. Mt. Gox is easily the best example, but even when we had our hard fork a while ago, people were able to work it out and get things figured out really quick. That's what
No, definitely all the miners pulled together and they got on the right fork, and it was resolved rather quickly. I still think, unfortunately, there's still some miners that might be on the old fork and haven't realised, and they'll be very gutted when they figure that out. But
Yeah, they left for vacation and left the miner running, and then got home and never cared to check.
yeah,
We haven't looked at their wallet in weeks, right?
Yeah. They're just assuming the miner is running in the bedroom.
Or they look at their wallet and they've just got loads of coins because they're the only one on that floor.
yeah. I'm a billion millionaire.
Difficulty is less than one.
No, but that's great. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to shoot off now anyway, because I mean I'm sure as Bobby's realised it's like coming up to 2 a.m. in the UK now. So.
5 minutes.
hey. Well, before I wrap anything up, anybody have any last words?
Actually, I have one technical question that leads from the previous discussion, and maybe Josh can answer it, and that is, these days, if people are running the wrong version of the wallet, and you get a little message that says you need to update your wallet, does that node, are its votes canceled out automatically because it's out of date?
Are you talking about, so it depends on the versioning. Now, Bitcoin has a built-in versioning system, so if they're maybe on a different version, you can set in the specification of the protocol that if the version is less than this, you can't communicate with each other. If that's not in place, then it's really up to the network to determine the miners itself to say, is this the correct block or not. Otherwise, it's going to be basically competing with the chain at all, and the longest chain will be the outweigh. If they continue to mine on that old chain and submit shares for that chain, then it's going to continue to build that chain basically.
Yeah, and after a while, just other clients won't connect to those older clients.
Yeah,
so...
you're going to basically find, you're going to be in that scenario where you might not know, but you're going to realize over time that you're not connected to the correct network.
I think,
Yeah, it usually happens when you try and send some coins to somebody. Is when
you'll start realizing that your block explorers are not showing your balances correctly, and that when you're sending your buddy coins or tips, they're not going through.
Mm-hmm.
I think the whole idea of voting, like you're saying, is an interesting concept in Bitcoin that maybe we could do like a whole episode about it, because yeah, there is the idea of one CPU, one vote, and like certain mining power could be a vote, but a vote for what? What matters in the vote? What things get included or not? And do you need 100%? I've heard some people say you need 100% because if people don't agree, they can just run their own. If only two people in the world don't agree, they could run their own thing. Or there's the whole idea of a 51% attack, and that could be the way voting works. It just needs a lot of fleshing out. What do you mean by voting, and how do the nodes kind of interpret the voting, and who do they agree with, who do they accept with, who do they communicate? That's a really interesting thing that could probably be talked about for a long time.
Yeah, definitely.
I hear you. The deciding factor for what is a majority and what determines the new deciding outcome of that vote, because realistically, like you said, if it's 51% agree on one, then why can't the other 49% start their own vote or start their own thing? I mean, it leads to decentralization in nature into whatever the vote is for, I guess. I mean, you have the option, and it's democratic. You can choose to go along with that party or start your own. Or like any altcoin, basically. If you don't want to go with Bitcoin, then start your own altcoin.
Right.
I think it's kind of I don't know. I think about Bitcoin as really a natural form, and it kind of reminds me of splitting cells in organisms. I mean, really, once it grows to its potential, and your amount of your audience grows to such a size that maybe one's being pulled to one side and the other to the other, you're eventually going to have a division, and they're going to split into two different entities, and that's really the essential nature of decentralization, is getting to choose your own outcome and pick which side you want to vote for.
Definitely.
Definitely. All right, guys, it's been great. I'm gonna clock off now, but no, it's been great meeting some of you guys, and
Thanks for coming.
hopefully I'll see you guys in the next meetup.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right, have a good night. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, unless anybody has anything else, I could wrap things up real quick. Any thoughts before we close?
Go Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, hey, I want to thank everyone for joining us. We started off slow, but that was pretty awesome, and we definitely will do it again sometime. Our original thought was maybe monthly. Well, yeah, we'll just see how it goes. I think I'm still planning to make this episode 21 of the podcast. I will probably end up trimming maybe the beginning.
Like
a lot of people didn't like what we were talking about, and it really wasn't entirely related to Bitcoin. So, but anyway, yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. I definitely hope to see you next time. Anyone listening or watching, just check out umeandbtc.com. There are still tipping addresses there. They'll always be there. Yeah, we're still always looking for feedback. If you want to contact any of us on Twitter, at umeandbtc, you can email me, Daniel at umeandbtc. If you want to ask questions, comments, we're looking for sponsors always. Another thank you to Canacoin for sponsoring us. Another thank you to EasyAt for a pretty awesome tip. Yeah, I guess we can close this anytime. We good?
It's good. Keep up the good work.
Cool. Yeah, thanks everyone, and we will see you.
See you.
It's good
Thank
fun.
you very much. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to this special edition of the You, Me, and BTC podcast. I want to thank everyone who joined us the other day. Keep an eye out for the next You, Me, and BTC virtual Bitcoin meetup. All of the music in today's show was from Jon Stewart. Tune in next Thursday.